In this video, we will learn to group, lock, and duplicate objects within Indesign CS6. Performing these tasks is an important component to successfully managing objects within your document. Within Indesign, you can combine objects into a group so that they are treated more as a single unit rather than individual pieces. From this point, you can move or transform the objects without affecting their individual positions or attributes. This can be especially helpful when creating something such as a logo. Chances are the elements of a logo were created separately, but can be moved or dealt with as a single unit more easily, and a grouping allows this to happen. Groups can also be nested, meaning they can be grouped into subgroups with larger groups. If groups have been nested, you can use the selection, direct selection, and group selection tools to select different levels of a nested group's hierarchy. If you're working with a stack of overlapping objects, and you group some of the objects that aren't adjacent in the stacking order, the selected objects will be pulled together in the stacking order, right behind the frontmost selected object. If you group objects that exist on different named layers, all the objects move to the frontmost layer on which you selected an object. Also, the objects you select must either be all locked or all unlocked. To demonstrate, I'm going to group several objects that are displayed on the screen. First, I must select all of these objects, and I can do that in a couple of ways. If my objects are positioned near each other, and no object near them should be excluded from the group, I can simply left-click my mouse on the page, hold, and then drag my cursor in order to select all of the objects. If I want to be more precise in my selection, I can first click on the first object, hold Shift on my keyboard regardless of whether I'm using a PC or a Mac, and then left-click the next object. I can continue to hold my Shift button down and click on as many objects that I'd like to include in the group. If I accidentally selected something that shouldn't be a part of the group, I have to ensure that I keep my Shift button held on the keyboard, and then I simply left-click on the object again. Once I have my object selected, I will use the Object menu, and then I'll select Group. Notice that I could also select Ctrl-G on a PC or Command-G on a Mac. Keep in mind that if you do not have more than one object selected, the Group option on that drop-down menu will not be available, and the keyboard shortcut will have no effect. Notice that I can now move the objects around on my page by selecting the group, and they all move together. To ungroup my objects, I first need to select the object, then select Object menu, and then select the Ungroup option. Again, you could use the keyboard shortcuts of Shift-Control-G on a PC or Shift-Command-G on a Mac. If your selected object is not part of a group, then that Ungroup option from the drop-down menu will be grayed out and unavailable. The Lock command can be used to specify that you don't want certain objects to move within your document. Locked objects will stay locked when the document is saved, closed, and then reopened. This is similar to locking layers within your document, but now we're limiting the locked feature to individual objects. Once the object is locked, it cannot be moved. However, you can select a locked object if you turn off the Prevent Selection of Locked Object option. I'm going to display this option by selecting the Edit menu, selecting Preferences, and then selecting General from the third-level menu. At this point, we would ensure that the General option is selected from the left-hand menu and uncheck the box that says Prevent Selection of Locked Objects. Click OK when finished. Reasons for allowing the selection of locked objects include changing attributes such as color or stroke. To lock an object, select it within the document, select the Object menu, and then select the Lock option. Notice that you could also select Ctrl-L on a PC or Command-L on a Mac. Notice now that the object has a small lock icon on it, indicating that it is now locked. To unlock one particular object, hover your cursor over the icon until your cursor changes to a lock. Then left-click your mouse on the lock icon. If you have multiple locked objects on your spread, you could also select the Object menu, and then select the Unlock All on Spread option. Notice that in this instance, we have no locked objects on our page, so this option is grayed out. Locking your objects can be a great way to ensure that you don't accidentally select and move an object while working on it within your document. Imagine how frustrating it would be to put your object exactly where you want it, only to accidentally move it later. Once you have positioned an object in a place that satisfies you, be sure to lock it so that you can start placing other objects within the document around it. Keep in mind that you can also use the Layers panel that was discussed in a previous video to both lock and unlock objects in addition to layers. If you'd like to hide an object so that it is not printed, exported, and cannot be selected, then select the object menu, and select the Hide option. To view all hidden objects within the document, within the Object menu, you would select the Show All on Spread option. In this case, it's grayed out because we don't have anything hidden, but if we did, we would be able to select it. If you'd like to create an object that appears on your screen, but is not printed or appears in portable versions of the document, select the object or text frame that shouldn't be printed. Then open the Attributes panel by selecting the Window menu, selecting Output, and selecting Attributes. Within the Attributes panel, select Non-Printing. Finally, we'll take a look at several methods for duplicating objects within a document. First, you can use the Duplicate command to replicate a selected object instantly. The new copy appears on the layout slightly offset down and to the right from the original. First, we must select the object, select the Edit menu, and then select Duplicate from the drop-down menu. You could also choose to use the keyboard shortcut of Alt-Shift-Control-D as in dog on a PC or Opт-Shift-Command-D as in dog on a Mac. You can duplicate an object each time you change its position, orientation, or proportions. For example, you can create a flower by drawing one petal, setting its reference point at the base of the petal, and then repeatedly rotating at incremental angles, simultaneously duplicating to leave behind a new copy of the petal at each angle. To achieve this, you could do any of the following during a transformation. If you're dragging the Selection tool, the Rotate tool, the Scale tool, or the Shear tool, you could start dragging and then hold down Alt on a PC or Opt on a Mac after you begin dragging. To constrain the duplicate's transformation, Alt-Shift and Drag on a PC or Opt-Shift and Drag on a Mac can work as well. So to demonstrate, I'm going to draw an oval shape on the document. Once the shape has been drawn, I'm going to activate the Selection tool by selecting V on my keyboard and hovering my mouse until I see the cursor that allows me to change the rotation, called the rotation handle. Then I'm going to hold the Alt button on a PC or Opt on a Mac and continue rotating the shape. Notice that I'm actually starting to rotate a duplicate of the shape. I can continue to do this until I finish making the shape that I was looking for. Now, using the techniques I learned moments ago, I'm going to select all of these objects. I'll remove the stroke. And now, to make this look more like a flower with petals, I'll select all of the objects and group it together using the Group option. I can do so by selecting the Object menu and selecting Group from the drop-down menu. Now notice that I can move this flower around as if it were a single object rather than a group of many different ovals. At this point, I could also apply the center circle of the flower. And now my object is complete. Also, rather than holding Alt or Opt on our keyboard and dragging with our mouse, we could also choose to use the arrow buttons on the keyboard. Next, we'll discuss the Step and Repeat command, which can instantly create rows or columns of duplicates. For example, you can fill a page with evenly spaced duplicates of a single business card design. So to demonstrate, first I'm going to select the flower that I just made. Then I'm going to select the Edit menu and select Step and Repeat. Next, I'm going to choose how many duplicates I want to make, not counting the original. Then I have to choose the horizontal and vertical offsets to specify how far to shift the position of each new duplicate from the previous duplicate along the X and Y axes. When finished, I'll click the OK button. Notice now that many duplicates of our flower have been placed within the document. This is an easy way to create many duplicates of an object and have them aligned in a way that we see fit. If you wanted to achieve this look without the step and repeat option, think about how long it would take you to duplicate the images several times. Use the Align tool to make sure all of the images were aligned the way you wanted them to, and then distribute them evenly on the page. It's important to save time, and the step and repeat option can really help you do just that. And finally, last but not least, you can also duplicate objects into a grid within Indesign. By dragging and using modifier keys, you can create a grid of objects identical to the object being duplicated. To demonstrate, I'm going to remove some of the items on our document. Next, I will select the object. Then, using the Selection tool, hold down Alt on a PC or Opt on a Mac and start dragging. While dragging, release the Alt or Opt key. Press the left or right arrows to change the number of columns. Press the up or down keys to change the number of rows. Finally, release the mouse button. Notice that many different flowers were made within a grid, which was caused by me holding in Alt while I dragged the item and using the up and down and left and right arrows to create the grid. This concludes our tutorial on grouping, locking, and duplicating objects. As mentioned plenty of times before, being efficient is important when creating publications within InDesign. Ensuring that you can group, lock, and duplicate objects when needed is a big part of reducing time that's needed to create great-looking documents.